I watched my son change the locks while I was still inside the house, and he told me I had 1 hour before he called the police.
My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 58 years old, and I never thought the boy I raised
would be the one to erase me from my own life. He didn't even look nervous. That's what stayed with me the most. Not anger, not hesitation, not even guilt. Just cold efficiency. Like he had already rehearsed this moment 100 times. "Dad," he said, standing in the doorway with a calm voice that didn't match the chaos ripping through my chest, "you need to pack your things." I actually laughed at first. A confused, disbelieving laugh. "What are you talking about?" I asked, stepping toward him. "This is my house." He didn't move. Didn't blink. Not anymore. That's when I noticed the locksmith van outside. That's when I noticed the unfamiliar man by the front door, tools already in hand. And that's when something inside me cracked. "You're joking," I said, my voice thinner now. "Ethan, this isn't funny." "I'm not joking." He stepped aside slightly, letting me see the paperwork sitting on the hallway table. Documents. Stamped. Signed. Official. "I've already transferred everything," he said. "The house, the accounts, all of it." My heart started pounding. "That's not possible." "It is," he replied. "You signed the authorization forms last month." I froze. Last month. My mind raced, flipping through memories like a deck of cards thrown in there. The hospital. The medication. The blurry days after my surgery. The stack of papers he told me were insurance updates. I felt my stomach drop. "You tricked me," I whispered. "I protected what's mine." "What's yours?" My voice rose. "I built this house. I paid for everything. I raised you here." "And I lived here," he shot back, his tone sharpening for the first time. "I dealt with everything you put me through." I blinked. "What are you talking about?" But he didn't answer. Instead, he looked at his watch. "You have 52 minutes now." That's when panic truly set in. Real panic. The kind that makes your hands shake and your thoughts scatter. "Ethan, stop this," I said, stepping closer, lowering my voice. "We can't talk about whatever this is." "There's nothing to talk about." "There is always something to talk about." I snapped. "You don't just throw your father out like garbage." He finally met my eyes again. And what I saw there. It wasn't anger. It was resentment. Years of it. Quiet. Buried. Growing. "You should have thought about that," he said slowly, "when you started treating me like I didn't matter." The words hit harder than I expected. Because I didn't understand them. Not fully. Not yet. "I gave you everything," I said. "No," he replied. "You gave me control, pressure, expectations, but not everything." Silence filled the space between us. Heavy. Suffocating. "You have 45 minutes, he added. And just like that, he turned away. I stood there for a moment, completely frozen. Then something primal kicked in. Survival. I ran upstairs. My hands moved fast, almost automatically, grabbing clothes, documents, anything I could carry. But my mind was stuck on one question. How did it get to this? Because in my head, I was a good father. I worked long hours, yes. I pushed him to succeed, yes. But that's what fathers do, right? That's what I believed. That's what I told myself. As I shoved shirts into a bag, memories started creeping in. Uninvited. Uncomfortable. Ethan at 10 years old, holding up a drawing. "Dad, look what I made." And me, barely glancing. "That's nice, but did you finish your math homework?" Ethan at 14, sitting on the couch after a game. "I scored today. Only one goal." I replied. "You need to push harder if you want to be the best." Ethan at 18, standing nervously in the kitchen. "I don't think I want to go into finance." "That's not a discussion," I cut him off. "You're not throwing your future away." I stopped packing. My hands slowly lowering. My breathing uneven. "No." I muttered to myself. That's not the same thing. But the memories didn't stop. They kept coming. Each one sharper than the last. Each one chipping away at the version of myself I had always believed. A knock on the door startled me. 30 minutes, Ethan's voice came from the hallway. I clenched my fists. This is insane, I said, opening the door. You're throwing your own father out because I pushed you to succeed. It wasn't pushing, he said quietly. It was control. That's the same thing. No, he replied. It's not. We stared at each other, and for the first time, I saw something else in his eyes. Pain. Real pain. You never listened, he said. Not once. Every time I tried to tell you how I felt, you turned it into a lecture. Every time I needed support, you gave me expectations. I was trying to make you strong. You were making me invisible. That sentence. It landed differently. He stepped closer now. You don't even know who I am, he said. Not really. I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Because deep down, I wasn't sure he was wrong. You have 20 minutes, he said, stepping back again. And just like that, the moment was gone. I finished packing in silence, each second heavier than the last. When I came downstairs, my bags in hand, the locksmith was already replacing the front lock. The sound of metal clicking into place felt final, permanent. Ethan stood by the door, watching, waiting. I stopped in front of him. This isn't over, I said. I know, he replied calmly. It's just the beginning. For what? For me, he said. That stung. More than anything else. I walked out of the house I had spent 30 years building, and the door closed behind me. Just like that, I was homeless, alone, and completely lost. But what I didn't know then, what I couldn't have possibly imagined, was that everything Ethan did, every calculated move, every cold decision, was connected to a secret his mother had taken to her grave, a secret that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my life, and turn me into the last person my son ever expected to become. The first night I slept in my car. I parked 2 streets away from the house, close enough to see the upstairs window where Ethan's room used to be, where he used to be. Now the lights were off. Everything felt different, like the house itself had already forgotten me. I leaned back in the driver's seat, staring at the ceiling, my hands still gripping the steering wheel long after the engine was off. 58 years of life, gone in 1 hour. I let out a slow breath, but it didn't calm anything. It just made the silence louder. My phone buzzed. For a split second, my heart jumped. Ethan. Maybe he changed his mind. Maybe this was all some twisted lesson, and now it was over. I grabbed the phone quickly. Unknown number. My chest tightened. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. Silence. Then a woman's voice. Soft. Controlled. Familiar in a way that made my skin prickle. Daniel Carter. Yes, who is this? A pause. Like she was choosing her words carefully. My name is Rebecca Hayes, she said. We need to talk about your wife. My grip tightened on the phone. My wife is dead. I know. The way she said it. Not sympathetic. Not cold either. Just factual. And that's exactly why you need to listen to me. I sat up straighter. Who are you? I worked with her, she replied. Before she died. That didn't make sense. My wife, Laura, hadn't worked in years. She stayed home. That was our agreement. That was. She never mentioned you, I said. I'm not surprised. Something about her tone made my stomach twist. What do you want? Another pause. Then she said something that made the air leave my lungs. Your son didn't steal your life, Daniel, she said quietly. He followed her instructions. I felt like I'd been punched. What? Everything that happened today, she continued. The house, the accounts, the documents, your wife set it in motion. That's not possible, I snapped. I would have known. No, she said. You wouldn't have. My heart started racing again. Faster this time. More chaotic. Why are you telling me this? Because she left something behind, Rebecca said. Something meant for you. I swallowed hard. What? A file. What kind of file? The kind, she replied, her voice lowering slightly. That explains why your son hates you and why your wife never told you the truth. My fingers went numb. This is some kind of joke. I don't joke about things like this. Then prove it. Silence. Then. I'll text you an address, she said. Be there tomorrow, alone. Wait. The call ended. Just like that. I stared at the phone. My reflection faintly visible on the black screen. Confused. Angry. And something else. Afraid. A message came through seconds later. An address. Across the city. I looked up at the dark house again. At the life I had just lost. And for the first time, I wondered if I had ever really understood it at all. I didn't sleep. Not really. Just drifted in and out of restless thoughts. Every memory felt unreliable now. Like pieces of a puzzle that didn't fit anymore. By morning my body ached. My eyes burned. But my mind was sharp. Focused. I started the car and drove. The address led me to an office building downtown. Modern. Glass exterior. The kind of place my wife would have hated. Or at least, I thought she would have. I parked across the street and sat there for a moment. Hands on the wheel again. Same position as last night. Different feeling. This time, I wasn't just lost. I was chasing something. Answers. Or maybe. The truth I had been avoiding my entire life. I stepped out of the car. Walked across the street. And entered the building. The receptionist looked up. Can I help you? I'm here to see Rebecca Hayes. She typed something quickly. Then nodded. 5th floor, office 512. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have. Every floor number lighting up slowly. Deliberately. Like it was building tension on purpose. When the doors opened, I stepped out into a quiet hallway. Muted colors. Soft lighting. Too calm. Too controlled. Office 512 was at the end. The door was slightly open. I pushed it gently. And there she was. Rebecca Hayes. Mid-40s. Sharp eyes. Professional posture. The kind of person who didn't waste words. You came, she said. I don't like games, I replied. Start talking. She studied me for a second. Like she was measuring something. Then she nodded toward the chair in front of her desk. Sit. I didn't. Talk. A flicker of something crossed her face. Amusement, maybe. Then she reached into a drawer, pulled out a thick file, and placed it on the desk. This, she said, is everything your wife couldn't tell you while she was alive. I stared at it. Didn't touch it. What is it? Proof, she said simply. Of what? She leaned forward slightly, her eyes locking onto mine. Of the man you really were, she said, and the man your son had to become because of it. My jaw tightened. I know who I am. Do you? The question hit harder than I expected. Open it, she said. I hesitated, then slowly reached out, my fingers brushing against the edge of the file. It felt heavier than it should have, like it carried more than just paper. I opened it. The first page was a photograph. My breath caught. It was Ethan, but younger, maybe 12, sitting in a room I didn't recognize, across from a woman, a therapist. My stomach dropped. What is this? I asked. Rebecca didn't answer right away. She let the silence sit, let it grow. Then, your son has been in therapy since he was 10 years old, she said. My heart skipped. That's not I would have known. No, she said calmly. You wouldn't have. I flipped the page. Session notes. Dates. Observations. Phrases highlighted. Subject displays signs of chronic emotional suppression. fear of disappointing father, associates love with performance-based approval. My hands started shaking. This is exaggerated. Keep reading. I did. And with every line, every word, every detail, the image I had built of myself started to crack, then shatter. Patient reports feeling invisible unless achieving success. Describes father as emotionally unavailable, controlling and dismissive. No, I whispered. My chest tightened, breathing harder now. Faster. This isn't true. Rebecca's voice came, steady and unrelenting. It's his truth. I slammed the file shut. He was a kid. I snapped. Kids say things. He didn't just say them, she replied. He lived them. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. I looked down at the file again. Then back at her. Why didn't my wife tell me? Rebecca's expression shifted slightly. Not softer, but more deliberate. Because she tried. My heart pounded. What does that mean? She tried to talk to you, Rebecca said. Multiple times. I shook my head. No, I would remember that. Would you? She asked. And suddenly, memories started surfacing again. Laura standing in the kitchen late at night. Daniel, we need to talk about Ethan. I'm tired, Laura, not now. Laura sitting next to me on the couch. He's struggling. He's fine, he just needs discipline. Laura's voice, quieter this time. He's not fine. Stop overreacting. I felt sick. She stopped trying, Rebecca continued. Because every time she did, you shut her down. I leaned back in the chair slowly. The air in the room felt thinner, harder to breathe. She made a decision, Rebecca said. What decision? To protect him, she replied. Even if it meant going behind your back. My throat went dry. So she, what? Put him in therapy without telling me. Yes. And this file. Rebecca placed her hand gently on it. She kept records, she said. Everything, sessions, observations, progress. Why? Her eyes didn't leave mine. Because she knew one day you'd need to see it. A long silence followed. My mind racing. Heart pounding. Trying to process something that refused to fit into the life I thought I had lived. And the house. I asked finally. The money. She planned that too. I looked up sharply. What? Rebecca's voice remained calm. Not as revenge, she said. As a safeguard. For what? For him, she replied. In case something ever happened to her, and you didn't change. The words hit like a hammer. And you didn't, she added quietly. I felt something inside me break. Not crack. Not weaken. Break. Completely. Because for the first time, I couldn't argue. I couldn't defend myself. I couldn't rewrite the past in a way that made me the hero. I just sat there, staring at the file, at the evidence, at the truth, and realized something that terrified me more than losing my home, more than losing my son, more than anything else. I had been the villain in my own family's story, and I never even knew it. I didn't speak for a long time. I just sat there, staring at that file like it might suddenly change, like the words might rearrange themselves into something less devastating. They didn't. They stayed exactly the same. Cold. Precise. Unforgiving. I want to see him, I said finally, my voice rough. Rebecca didn't react immediately. You're not ready. That hit something in me. I'm his father, I snapped. I don't need permission. No, she said calmly. But if you go to him like this, you'll lose him for good. I've already lost him. Not completely, she replied. If that were true, he wouldn't have followed her plan. I frowned. What does that mean? Rebecca leaned back slightly, studying me again. Your wife didn't just leave instructions for the assets, she said. She left conditions. My chest tightened. What kind of conditions? For Ethan, she said. About you. A slow, creeping unease settled in. Say it clearly. She told him to give you a chance, Rebecca said. One chance. My heart skipped. A chance to do what? To face the truth, she replied. To understand what you did, and to decide whether you're capable of changing. I laughed. But there was no humor in it. So this is some kind of test. In a way. And if I fail? Rebecca's eyes didn't soften. Then you don't just lose your house, she said. You lose your son permanently. Silence. The kind that presses against your chest. Makes every breath feel heavier. What do I have to do? I asked. For now, she said. Nothing impulsive. That's not an answer. It is, she replied. You've spent your entire life reacting, controlling, deciding what's best for everyone else without actually listening. Her words cut deep because they were true. You need to slow down, she continued. Process, reflect, understand. And then what? She tapped the file lightly. Then you come back, she said. And we talk about the next step. I clenched my jaw. I don't have time for therapy sessions. Then you've already failed. That shut me up. Completely. Because for the first time, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't about proving I was right. It wasn't about fixing things quickly. It was about becoming someone I had never been before, and I didn't even know where to start. The next few days were unbearable, not because of where I was staying. I got a cheap motel on the edge of the city. Small room. Faded walls. A bed that creaked every time I moved. I could have handled that. What I couldn't handle was the silence. No schedules. No responsibilities. No one expecting anything from me. For decades, my life had been structured around control. Work. Decisions. Plans. Now. Nothing. Just time. And thoughts. Too many thoughts. I found myself replaying moments over and over again. Not the big ones. Not the achievements I used to be proud of. The small ones. The ones I never paid attention to. Ethan standing at the doorway, waiting for me to look up from my laptop. Laura watching us from the kitchen, her expression unreadable. Conversations I barely remembered, now echoing in my head like they meant everything. Because they did. I just didn't see it back then. One night, I opened the file again. I told myself I'd just skim through it. I didn't. I read everything. Every session note. Every observation. Every piece of my son's inner world that had been hidden from me. And it broke me in ways I didn't expect. There was one entry that I couldn't get out of my head. Patient says, I don't think my dad would like me if I wasn't good at things. I stared at that line for a long time. Hours, maybe. Because I tried to argue with it. Tried to justify it. Tried to twist it into something else. But I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew where that feeling came from. Me. On the 5th day, I went back to Rebecca. This time, I didn't hesitate when I walked into her office. Didn't argue. Didn't demand. I just sat down. She noticed immediately. You read it, she said. All of it. And I took a slow breath. I don't recognize myself in there, I admitted. But I also can't deny it. She nodded slightly. That's a start. It doesn't feel like one, I said. It feels like everything I thought I was wrong. Not wrong, she corrected. Incomplete. I looked at her. What does that mean? It means you weren't a monster, she said. But you weren't the father he needed either. That hit differently. Less like an attack. More like a reality I had to accept. So what now? I asked. Rebecca leaned forward slightly. Now, she said, you write to him. I blinked. What? You write a letter. That's it. I asked. I just write a letter and everything gets fixed. No, she said calmly. You write a letter because it's the only way he'll listen right now. I shook my head. This is ridiculous. Is it? She asked. Or is it just something you can't control? I exhaled sharply. She had a point. What do I even say? The truth, she said. Not your version of it, not your excuses, the truth. And how do I know what that is? Rebecca's gaze held steady. You just proved you do, she said. By coming back here. That night, I sat at the small desk in the motel room. A blank piece of paper in front of me. A pen in my hand. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know how to start. Not because I didn't have words, but because none of the words I usually used felt right anymore. I stared at the page. Minutes passed, then an hour, then more, and slowly, something shifted. I stopped trying to sound like the man I used to be, and started writing like the man I was becoming. Ethan, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you'll care. But for the first time, I'm not writing to convince you of anything. I'm writing because I finally understand something I should have seen years ago. I didn't listen to you. Not really. I heard your words, but I never heard what you were trying to tell me. I thought I was helping you. I thought I was making you stronger. But all I did was make you feel like you weren't enough unless you proved it. And that's on me. Not you. Me. I stopped, my hand trembling slightly, because every word felt exposed, honest in a way I had never allowed myself to be. I kept writing, not to defend myself, not to explain, just to admit everything. When I finished, the sun was starting to rise. I read it once, then folded it, and for the first time in days, I felt something different, not relief, not hope, but clarity. The next morning, I stood across the street from the house again. The same spot, the same view. But I wasn't the same man. I walked up to the front door, raised my hand, and knocked. A few seconds later, the door opened. Ethan stood there, looking at me, expression unreadable. Neither of us spoke. I held out the letter. That's it, I said quietly. No arguments, no explanations. He hesitated, then took it. Our fingers brushed for a second, and in that brief moment, I felt the distance between us more clearly than ever before. I'll be around, I added. If you ever want to talk. I turned, started walking away, not expecting anything, not demanding anything, just leaving the choice to him. For the first time, and just as I reached the sidewalk, Dad, I stopped, slowly turned back. Ethan was still standing in the doorway, the letter in his hand, unopened. But his voice, it wasn't cold this time. It wasn't distant. It was uncertain. And that alone was more than I deserved. Yeah, I said. He looked down at the letter, then back at me. And for the first time since that day, I saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Not anger, not resentment. Something fragile, something dangerous, something that could either break completely or finally begin to heal. Why now? He asked quietly. And I realized this was the moment that would decide everything. I didn't answer immediately, not because I didn't have something to say, but because, for the first time in my life, I understood that the wrong answer here wouldn't just start another argument. It would end everything. Because I finally listened, I said. Ethan's expression didn't change right away, but I saw it. A slight shift, a flicker behind his eyes, like he was searching for something in my face, something familiar, something real. You've said that before, he replied quietly. I nodded. I know. Silence stretched between us again. But this time it wasn't suffocating. It was tense, like a wire pulled tight, ready to snap or hold. I didn't understand what listening actually meant, I continued. I thought it was hearing words, fixing problems, giving solutions. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. That's all you ever did. I know, I said. And I thought that made me a good father. I took a slow step closer. Not enough to invade his space. Just enough to show I wasn't running anymore. But I never stopped to ask if that's what you needed. He looked away for a second, down at the letter in his hand, then back at me. And now you think one letter fixes that? No, I said immediately. It doesn't fix anything. Then what's the point? The point is, I'm not trying to fix it anymore, I said. I'm trying to understand it. That made him pause. Actually pause. You didn't just hurt me once, he said, his voice tightening. It wasn't one mistake, Dad. It was years. I know. And you don't just get to decide you're different now. I'm not deciding, I replied. I'm trying. His eyes narrowed slightly. That's not the same thing. No, I agreed. It's not. Another silence. But this one felt heavier. Because now we were standing in the truth. Not dancing around it. Not hiding from it. You really didn't know, he asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. Know what? That I felt like that, he said. That I hated being around you sometimes. The word hated landed hard. But I didn't react the way I used to. Didn't defend. Didn't argue. I just answered. No, I said honestly. I didn't. His expression twisted slightly. A mix of frustration and something deeper. That's the worst part, he said. You didn't even notice. I notice now. That doesn't change then. No, I said quietly. It doesn't. He looked at me for a long moment, like he was trying to decide something. Something important. You want to know why I followed Mom's plan? He asked. My chest tightened. Yes. He nodded slowly. Because she was the only one who saw me, he said. Really saw me. I swallowed. And she told me something before she died. My heart started pounding again. What did she say? Ethan's grip tightened slightly on the letter. She said, you weren't a bad man, he said. Just a man who didn't know how to love without conditions. The words hit deeper than anything else so far. Because they weren't angry. They weren't accusing. They were accurate. She said if I ever wanted a real relationship with you, he continued, I'd have to force you to see what you were doing. And this. I gestured slightly around us. This was the only way. Ethan nodded. You wouldn't have listened otherwise. I couldn't even argue with that. Because I knew. He was right. I didn't do this to destroy you, he added. I did it because I didn't know any other way to make you see me. That sentence. It broke something inside me all over again. Not in a violent way. In a quiet one. The kind that settles deep and stays there. I see you now, I said. He didn't respond. Didn't accept it. But he didn't reject it either. And that mattered. More than I expected. What happens next? I asked carefully. Ethan looked down at the letter again. Then back at me. You leave, he said. My chest tightened slightly. Okay. I read this, he lifted the letter slightly, and then I decide. Decide what? If you're someone I can let back into my life, he said. Fair. Painful but fair. And if I'm not? I asked. Ethan's eyes held mine. Then this is goodbye. The words hung there. Final. Heavy. Real. I nodded slowly. I understand. And for the first time. I actually did. No arguments. No resistance. Just acceptance. I'll go, I said. I turned again. Walked down the steps. Each step feeling like it carried the weight of everything I had lost, and everything I might still lose. I reached the sidewalk. Kept walking. Didn't look back this time. Because I knew. This wasn't something I could control anymore. This wasn't something I could fix with the right words or the right plan. This was something I had to earn. Or lose. 3 days passed. 3 long silent days. No calls. No messages. Nothing. Every minute felt stretched. Every hour heavier than the last. I didn't go back to the house. Didn't try to contact him. Because for once, I respected the boundary. even though it was killing me. On the fourth day, my phone buzzed. I froze, just stared at it for a second, afraid to move, afraid to break whatever moment this was. Then I picked it up. Ethan. Just his name on the screen. No message yet. Just typing. My heart started racing, faster than it had in years. Then the message came through. Come by tomorrow, 10 a.m. That was it. No explanation. No emotion. Just an opening. And somehow, that felt bigger than anything else. The next morning, I stood in front of the house again. Same door. Same walls. But everything felt different now. Because this time, I wasn't coming back to take anything. I was coming back to face whatever came next. I knocked. The door opened almost immediately. Ethan stood there. Calm. Composed. But not cold. Not like before. Come in, he said. And for the first time since I was thrown out. He stepped aside, letting me enter. Not as the man who owned the house. Not as the man who controlled everything. But as something else. Something uncertain. Something fragile. Something that finally had a chance to be real. I walked inside slowly. Every step careful. Every breath measured. And as the door closed behind me, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to believe until now. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a completely different one. And this time, I wasn't writing it alone. The door clicked shut behind me, and for a second, I just stood there. Same walls. Same furniture. Same faint scent of coffee and wood polish. But it didn't feel like my house anymore. It felt like his. Ethan walked ahead without saying anything, and I followed, slower, more aware of every step I took, like I was afraid the floor itself might reject me. Sit, he said, gesturing toward the dining table. I used to sit at the head, without thinking, without asking. Today, I didn't. I pulled out a chair on the side and sat down quietly. That didn't go unnoticed. He saw it. Didn't comment. But I saw it register. Small things. They mattered now. He placed my letter on the table. Opened. Folded differently than before. Read. Multiple times, probably. I read it, he said. I nodded. Didn't speak. Didn't rush to fill the silence like I used to. He took a breath. Slow. Measured. You didn't defend yourself, he said. I wanted to, I admitted. A lot. Why didn't you? Because every defense I came up with sounded like an excuse. His eyes stayed on me. Sharp. Observing. And I'm tired of explaining myself in a way that avoids the truth. That landed. I could feel it. Not as impact. As weight. He leaned back slightly. Crossed his arms. Not closed off, just guarded. You said something in the letter, he continued. That you didn't know how to love without conditions. I swallowed. Yeah. Do you believe that? I didn't answer immediately. Because this wasn't a question I could answer quickly anymore. Yes, I said finally. I think I tied love to outcomes. Meaning. I felt proud when you succeeded, I said. I felt connected to you when you were doing well. And when I wasn't. I held his gaze. I pulled away, I admitted. Or I pushed harder. His jaw tightened slightly. Exactly. Silence. But this silence wasn't hostile. It was processing. He tapped his fingers lightly on the table. Then stopped. You know what the worst part was? He asked. I didn't respond. Just waited. Not the pressure, he said. Not even the expectations. I felt my chest tighten. It was that I never knew if you actually liked me, he finished. That sentence. It didn't hit like a punch. It sank. Slow. Deep. And stayed there. I loved you, I said quietly. I know, he replied immediately. That's what makes it confusing. I frowned slightly. Confusing. Yeah, he said. Because you can love someone and still make them feel like they're not enough. I leaned back slightly, exhaled. Yeah, I said. I'm starting to understand that. Another pause. Longer this time. He uncrossed his arms, leaned forward, rested his elbows on the table. A shift. Subtle, but important. Mom didn't hate you, he said suddenly. My chest tightened. I know. She was frustrated, he continued. But she believed you could change. I looked down for a second, then back at him. I wish I had listened to her. Ethan nodded slowly. Me too. That hurt more than anything else. Because it wasn't anger. It was regret. Shared regret. We used to talk about it, he said. Late at night. My chest felt heavy. About me. About you, he confirmed. About us. I leaned forward slightly. What did she say? He hesitated, like he was deciding how much to share. Then, she said you didn't come from a place where emotions were safe. That caught me off guard. I blinked. What? She said you were raised to perform too, he added. That you didn't know any other way. Something shifted inside me. Because I hadn't thought about that in years. Decades maybe. My dad. I started, then stopped. Ethan waited. Didn't interrupt. Didn't rush me. Something he never used to get from me. He wasn't soft, I said finally. Everything was about results, discipline, achievement. Ethan nodded slightly. Sounds familiar. I almost smiled. But it didn't fully form. I thought I was doing better than him, I admitted. And in some ways you probably were, Ethan said. I looked at him. Surprised. But not in the ways that mattered to me, he added. Fair. Completely fair. So what now? I asked quietly. Ethan leaned back again. But this time less guarded. More thoughtful. I don't know yet, he said honestly. I nodded. That's fair. I'm not ready to just go back to how things were. I don't want that either, I said immediately. He looked at me. Really looked. Then what do you want? The question hung there. Simple. But heavier than anything else. I want to get to know you, I said. Not as my son, not as someone I'm responsible for shaping. I paused. Chose my words carefully. But as a person. He didn't respond right away. But I saw it again. That flicker. That fragile thing that could either grow or disappear. That's going to take time, he said. I have time. Consistency, he added. Not just words. I understand. And boundaries. I nodded. Tell me what they are. He studied me for a second. Then. You don't show up unannounced. Okay. You don't try to control decisions in my life. Okay. You don't turn conversations into lectures. That one stung. But I nodded anyway. Okay. And if I say I need space, I give it to you, I finished. He held my gaze. Then nodded once. Yeah. Silence again. But this time, it felt different. Not heavy. Not tense. Just new. Unfamiliar. But not uncomfortable. I'm not promising anything, he said. I'm not asking for a promise. I might still decide this isn't something I can do. I understand. And if that happens, I'll respect it, I said. And for the first time. I meant it without any hidden resistance. He leaned back slightly. Exhaled. Like he had been holding something in. Okay, he said quietly. Just that. Okay. Not forgiveness. Not acceptance. But not rejection either. And right now. That was enough. More than enough. I stood up slowly. Not rushing. Not lingering. I'll go, I said. He nodded. Walked me to the door. Not out of obligation. Just naturally. As I stepped outside, I paused. Turned back slightly. Ethan. Yeah. I'm proud of you, I said. He tensed slightly. I saw it. Old reflex. But I didn't add anything. Didn't qualify it. Didn't tie it to anything. Just let it sit. Pure. Unconditional. For the first time. He didn't respond right away. But he didn't reject it either. And as I walked away, I realized something I hadn't understood before. This wasn't about getting my old life back. That life was built on something broken. This was about building something new. Something slower. Something real. Something that didn't rely on control, but on choice. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to make that choice. Every single day. Even if it took the rest of my life to get it right. The first week after that conversation felt unfamiliar. Not painful in the way the first days had been. Not empty either. Just uncertain. Like walking into a room you've lived in your whole life, but suddenly everything's been rearranged. You recognize it, but you don't know how to move in it anymore. I didn't call Ethan. Didn't text. Didn't check in. Every instinct I had told me to. Just a quick message. Just something small. But I didn't. Because for the first time, I understood that doing nothing was actually doing something. Respecting what he asked for. Space. 3 days later, my phone buzzed. A message from him. Coffee, Saturday, 11. That was it. No extra words. No emotion. But I stared at that message like it was something fragile. Something important. Because it was. I didn't respond right away. Old habit would have kicked in. Yes, of course. Where? I'll be there early. We can talk. No. I typed something simple. Okay. Sent. And left it there. Saturday came faster than I expected. I got there 10 minutes early. Then realized what I was doing and stepped back outside. Walked around the block once. Twice. Until it was exactly 11. Then I walked in. Ethan was already there. Sitting at a corner table. Coffee in front of him. Phone on the table face down. He looked up when I approached. Hey. Hey. I sat down across from him. Not at the head. Not positioning myself. Just sitting. How are you? I asked. Simple. Neutral. He shrugged slightly. Busy. I nodded. What have you been working on? He looked at me for a second. Like he was checking something. Testing something. Design project, he said. Freelance stuff. I blinked. Design. Yeah. I paused. Because part of me wanted to say it. Since when? Why didn't you tell me? But I stopped it. That wasn't the point. That's great, I said instead. What kind of design? Something shifted in his expression. Subtle. But real. Branding mostly, he said. Logos, identity packages. That sounds creative. He almost smiled. Almost. It is. I nodded. That's good. Silence settled between us. But it wasn't uncomfortable. Just new. Different. So, he said after a moment, this is weird. I let out a small breath. Yeah, I agreed. It is. But not bad weird, he added. I looked at him. Yeah, I said. Not bad weird. He nodded. Took a sip of his coffee. You didn't ask why I never told you about the design thing, he said. I leaned back slightly. Do you want me to? He considered that. Then shook his head. No. Okay. Another pause. Then. I didn't tell you because I knew what you'd say, he admitted. I didn't defend myself. Didn't say I would have supported him. Because the truth was. Back then. I probably wouldn't have. I understand, I said. He looked at me again. Longer this time. You're not arguing. I'm trying not to. Why? Because arguing was never about understanding, I said. It was about winning. He let out a quiet breath. Yeah, he said. It felt like that. I know. We sat there for a moment. Then he leaned forward slightly. Say it, he said. What? What you would have said, he clarified. Back then, about the design thing. I hesitated, because I knew. I knew exactly what I would have said. That it's not stable, I admitted. That it's risky, that you should focus on something more secure. He nodded slowly. Yeah. And I would have been wrong, I added. That caught him off guard. Wrong, he asked. Yes, I said. Because I would have been deciding your life based on my fears, not your goals. Silence. But this time, it felt like something was shifting. Not dramatically, not all at once, but moving. You really think that now? He asked. I do. Or you just know that's what I want to hear. I held his gaze. If I was trying to tell you what you wanted to hear, I would have said I always supported you. He watched me carefully. And you didn't. No, I said. I didn't. Another pause. Then something unexpected happened. He leaned back, relaxed slightly. Not fully, but enough to notice. That's new, he said. What is? You admitting things without trying to soften them. I nodded. I'm learning. He let out a small breath. Yeah, he said. I can see that. That meant more than anything else so far. Because it wasn't approval. It was recognition. And that's where change actually starts. We talked for another hour. Nothing heavy. Nothing explosive. Just normal things. Work. Daily life. Small stories. But even in those small moments, I noticed something. I was listening. Not waiting to respond. Not preparing advice. Just listening. And for the first time, I realized how much I had missed. How much of him I had never really known. When we stood up to leave, it didn't feel forced. Didn't feel like an obligation. It felt natural. I'll text you, he said. Okay. We walked out together. Stopped outside. A brief pause. Then. Hey, he said. Yeah. I meant what I said before, he added. This is going to take time. I know. And I'm not there yet. I know. He nodded. Then gave a small, almost awkward half-smile. But this is better. I felt something settle in my chest. Not relief. Not victory. Just something steady. Yeah, I said. It is. He turned and walked away. And this time, I didn't feel like I was losing him. Not anymore. That night, I sat in the motel room again. Same desk. Same chair. Same quiet. But everything felt different. Because now, the silence wasn't filled with regret. It was filled with something else. Possibility. And as I looked at my phone, at the short, simple message he had sent me earlier, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to believe before. This wasn't just about fixing the past. It was about earning a future. One conversation at a time. One choice at a time. One moment at a time. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of how long that might take. Because now, I finally understood what I was working toward. Weeks passed. Not quickly. Not slowly. Just steadily. And that was new for me. There was no big moment. No sudden breakthrough. No emotional explosion that fixed everything overnight. Just small things. Consistent things. Real things. Coffee turned into a routine. Not scheduled in advance. Not forced. Just happening. Sometimes he'd text first. Sometimes I would. Short messages. Free today. Yeah, 5. Okay. And that would be enough. We didn't dive into heavy topics every time. Most days we didn't. We talked about his work more. I learned about clients. Deadlines. Design revisions that made no sense. And for the first time, I didn't try to fix anything. I didn't say you should do this. I didn't say here's a better way. I just asked questions. And listened. Really listened. And something started to change. Not just in him. In me. I noticed it one afternoon. We were sitting in the same coffee shop. Same corner table. Ethan was explaining a project. Something about a brand identity for a startup. Colors, typography, audience, details I wouldn't have cared about before. But now, I was paying attention, not pretending, actually interested. And the client keeps changing direction, he said, frustrated. It's like they don't even know what they want. I nodded. That sounds exhausting. He stopped, looked at me. Yeah, he said slowly. It is. There was a pause. Then he added. Usually you'd say something like, just take control of the situation. I let out a small breath. Yeah, I said. I probably would have. But you didn't. I didn't. Why? Because I don't know your situation better than you do, I said. And sometimes people don't need solutions. They just need to be heard. He stared at me for a second. Not suspicious. Not guarded. Just processing. Then he nodded. Yeah, he said quietly. That helps more. That moment. It was small. Anyone else would have missed it. But I didn't. Because I knew what it meant. It meant I was finally giving him something he had been asking for his entire life, without even realizing it. But change isn't linear. I learned that the hard way. About a month in. I messed up. Not in a big, explosive way. In a small, familiar one. And somehow, that made it worse. We were talking about his finances. He brought it up. Not me. Mentioned something about inconsistent income from freelance work. I listened at first. Nodded. Asked a couple of questions. But then, old habits slipped in. Quietly. Naturally. Dangerously. You should consider something more stable, I said. At least until things. I stopped. But it was too late. The words were already out. Ethan's expression changed instantly. Not dramatically, but enough. Enough for me to see it. That wall. Coming back up. I'm handling it, he said, his tone flat. I know, I said quickly. I didn't mean. You did, he cut in. Silence. Heavy. Sharp. I felt it immediately. That shift. That distance. I'm sorry, I said. He didn't respond. Just looked away. And in that moment, I realized something important. This wasn't about never making mistakes again. It was about what I did after them. I slipped, I admitted. That's exactly what you were talking about before. Still no response. I wasn't listening, I continued. I was trying to fix. He exhaled slowly, still looking away. That's what you always did. I know. Another pause. Then he looked back at me. And you said you wouldn't. I said I'd try, I corrected gently. Not that I'd be perfect. That landed. Not as an excuse, but as honesty. I'm working on it, I added. But I'm going to mess up sometimes. He studied me for a second, then leaned back. Not fully relaxed, but not closed off either. Yeah, he said quietly. I guess that makes sense. Relief didn't hit me like a wave. It came slowly. Because I knew. This was part of it. Not avoiding mistakes. Learning how to handle them. Together. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Ethan invited me over. Not for a conversation. Not for coffee. For dinner. At the house. I stood outside the door for a second before knocking. Not because I was nervous. Because I understood what it meant. This wasn't neutral ground anymore. This was personal. The door opened. Ethan stepped aside. Hey. I walked in. Same house. Same space. But it felt different again. Not like before. Not like the first time I came back. Something in between. Something evolving. I'm cooking, he said, heading toward the kitchen. I followed. Stopped at the edge. Watched for a second. You cook now? I asked. He smirked slightly. Yeah, turns out I can survive without your meal plans. I smiled. Softly. Looks like it. There was an ease in the air. Not complete. Not effortless. but real. Want to help? He asked. That caught me off guard. Yeah, I said. What do you need? He handed me a knife. Chop those. Simple. Normal. But as I stood there, cutting vegetables in a kitchen I once controlled, I felt something shift again. Not power. Not authority. Something quieter. Belonging. Earned. Not assumed. We cooked. Talked. Small things. Nothing heavy. Nothing forced. And when we sat down to eat, there was a moment, brief, but clear, where everything felt okay. Not perfect. Not fixed. But okay. And that was enough. More than enough. Halfway through dinner, Ethan looked up. You know, Mom would have liked this. My chest tightened slightly. Yeah. He nodded. She always wanted things to be like this. I looked around the table. At the food. At him. At the space between us that didn't feel so wide anymore. Me too, I said quietly. He didn't respond. But he didn't have to. Because we both knew. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about her too. Her hope. Her belief. Her plan. And for the first time, it didn't feel like something that had torn us apart. It felt like something that had given us a second chance. Later that night, as I stood by the door getting ready to leave, Ethan walked up beside me. Hey, he said. Yeah. He hesitated. Just for a second. Then. I'm glad you came. Simple. But real. I nodded. Me too. I reached for the door. Paused. Then looked back at him. I'll see you soon. He didn't answer right away. But then he nodded. Yeah. And as I stepped outside, I realized something that would have been impossible just weeks ago. I wasn't walking away from my son anymore. I was walking toward a relationship that was finally real. Slow. Fragile. Imperfect. But real. And this time, that was more than enough. The night air felt different as I stepped outside. Not lighter. Not heavier. Just steady. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't replaying every word in my head, looking for mistakes. I wasn't questioning what I should have said differently. I just let the moment be what it was. Good. Not perfect. But good. And that was new. The next few weeks settled into something that almost felt like a rhythm. Not a routine. Because routines feel controlled. Predictable. This wasn't that. This was chosen. Sometimes we met twice in a week. Sometimes not at all. But the space between conversations didn't feel like distance anymore. It felt like breathing room. And I respected it. One afternoon, I got a message from Ethan that was different. Not a question. Not a plan. Just a statement. Got a client meeting tomorrow. Big one. I stared at it for a second. Then typed back. Good luck. I almost added more. Advice. Encouragement. Something longer. But I stopped. Sent just that. A few seconds later. Thanks. That was it. But it felt right. The next day, I didn't hear from him. And for a moment, old instincts started creeping in again. Should I ask how it went? Should I check in? But I didn't. Because I realized something important. Support doesn't always mean showing up immediately. Sometimes it means trusting the other person to come to you. That night my phone buzzed. It went well. I smiled. Actually smiled. That's great. Another pause. Then. Want to hear about it? I didn't hesitate this time. Yeah. He called. Not text. Called. I picked up immediately. Hey. Hey. There was a small shift in his voice. Energy. Excitement. They loved the concept, he said. Like actually loved it. That's amazing. I thought they'd tear it apart, he added. But they didn't. I could hear it. The relief. The pride. The disbelief. You worked for that, I said. You earned it. There was a pause. Then, "Yeah," he said quietly. "I did. We talked for 20 minutes. About the meeting, the details, his ideas, and the entire time. I didn't interrupt, didn't redirect, didn't take over. I just stayed there, present. And when the call ended, it didn't feel like I had just heard about his life. It felt like I had been invited into it." A few days later, something unexpected happened again. Ethan asked about me. Not casually. Not as a polite return question. Genuinely. "So, what have you been doing?" he asked over coffee. I paused. Because that question used to be easy. Work. Meetings. Projects. Structure. Now. "I've been figuring things out," I said. He raised an eyebrow slightly. "Like what?" I leaned back. Exhaled. "Like who I am, without everything I used to define myself by." He watched me. Interested. Not skeptical. Just listening. "I spent so many years being the provider." I continued. "The one who had everything under control. The one who made decisions." "And now," he asked. "Now I don't have that," I said. "And it's uncomfortable. I can't imagine. But it's also—" I paused, searching for the word. "Honest." That caught his attention. "Honest." "Yeah," I said. "Because for the first time, I'm not hiding behind responsibility or control. I'm just me. Silence. But not empty. Thoughtful." "And who is that?" he asked. I smiled slightly. "I'm still figuring that out." He nodded. "Fair." Then he added something I didn't expect. "I think that's a good thing." I looked at him. "Yeah." "Yeah," he said. "Because the version of you before didn't really leave room for anything else." That was true. Painfully true. "I see that now," I said. He took a sip of his coffee. Then, "You're different," he said. I didn't react immediately. "Yeah." "Yeah," he repeated. "Not just in what you say, but how you are." I nodded slowly. "I'm trying to be." He shook his head slightly. "No," he said. "You are. That." That meant more than anything else so far. Because it wasn't about effort. It was about change. Real change. But the real turning point came a week later. In a moment I didn't expect. Didn't plan. And definitely didn't control. It was late. Almost midnight. My phone rang. Ethan. I answered immediately. "Hey. Can you come over?" His voice was different. Tight. Unsteady. My chest tightened. "Yeah, I'm on my way." No questions. No hesitation. Just action. I grabbed my keys and drove. The entire way there my mind raced. What happened? Was he okay? Was someone hurt? But I didn't call back. Didn't push. Just got there as fast as I could. The house was dark except for the living room light. I knocked. The door opened almost instantly. Ethan stood there. But something was off. His posture. His expression. He looked shaken. "Hey," I said quietly. He stepped aside. I walked in. Closed the door behind me. "What happened?" I asked. He ran a hand through his hair. Exhaled sharply. "I messed up," he said. I didn't respond right away. Just waited. Let him continue. "The client," he said. "The one I told you about, I made a mistake in the final files. Something small but important." He paced slightly. "They noticed, called me out on it, and now they're questioning everything." His voice was tight. Frustrated. Angry at himself. "I should have caught it," he said. "I always catch things like that." I nodded slowly. "That sounds stressful." He stopped pacing. Looked at me. "You're not going to tell me how to fix it." I shook my head. "No." "Why not?" "Because you already know how," I said. Silence. Then, "Yeah," he admitted quietly. "I do." He sat down. Ran his hands over his face. I just hate that I screwed it up. I get that. Another pause. Then he looked at me again. What would you have said before? He asked. I exhaled. Probably something about being more careful, I admitted. About double-checking everything. About not making mistakes like that again. He nodded. Yeah. But that wouldn't help you right now, I added. He didn't respond. Just listened. You already know all of that, I said. You don't need me to tell you how to be better. You need someone to sit with you while you figure it out. The room went quiet. Really quiet. And then, something changed. Not in the room. In him. His shoulders dropped slightly. The tension in his face softened. Just a little. You're actually doing it, he said quietly. Doing what? Being there, he said. Without trying to take over. I swallowed. Yeah. He nodded slowly. Then leaned back. Exhaled. And for the first time that night, he looked calmer. Not fixed. Not okay. But supported. Real support. And that's when I realized something that hit deeper than anything else so far. This wasn't about me proving I had changed. This was about him feeling it. In moments like this, when it actually mattered, we sat there for a while, talking through it, not solving everything, but enough. Enough for him to breathe again. And as I got up to leave later that night, he stopped me. Hey. I turned. Yeah. He hesitated. Then. I'm glad I called you. Simple. But powerful. I nodded. Me too. And as I walked out into the night again, I realized something that finally, truly settled inside me. I wasn't trying to become a better father anymore. I was becoming someone my son could actually trust. And that changed everything. I didn't go straight back to the motel that night. I drove for a while. No music. No destination. Just the quiet hum of the engine and the steady rhythm of my thoughts. Not the chaotic kind from before. Not the kind that spiraled into regret. These were different. Clearer. Grounded. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about what was slowly being rebuilt. And more importantly, how it was being rebuilt. Not through control. Not through pressure. But through presence. Through patience. Through moments like the one we just had. Where I didn't try to be the answer. I just showed up. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. Not from stress. Not from anxiety. Just awake. I sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, staring at the floor. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. Nothing. No immediate plan. No rushing into action. Just sat there. Breathing. Thinking. Letting the quiet exist without trying to fill it. And in that quiet something surfaced. A thought that had been there for a while, but I hadn't fully faced it yet. I didn't have a life anymore. Not the one I used to. No house. No routine. No identity built around being needed. For a second, that realization hit hard. But then, it shifted. Because maybe that wasn't entirely true. Maybe I didn't lose my life. Maybe I lost the version of it that wasn't working. And now, I had space to build something new. Something better. Something real. Later that afternoon, I met Rebecca again. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to. She looked up as I walked into her office. You look different, she said. I almost smiled. Yeah, I replied. I feel different. She gestured to the chair. I sat. How are things with Ethan? She asked. I leaned back slightly. Better, I said. Not fixed, but better. She nodded. That's usually how it goes. I hesitated for a second. Then. I messed up, I admitted. She raised an eyebrow slightly. And. I didn't try to cover it, I said. I didn't justify it, I just acknowledged it. And how did he respond? He stayed, I said. That seemed to matter to her. She nodded slowly. Good. Silence for a moment. Then I leaned forward. There's something else, I said. She waited. I don't know who I am without all of this, I admitted. Without the control, without the structure, without being the one in charge. Rebecca didn't answer immediately. She studied me, carefully. Then, "Good," she said. I frowned slightly. "Good." "Yes," she replied, "because that means you're finally asking the right question." I leaned back. "And what's the answer?" "There isn't one," she said. "Not yet." That frustrated me more than I expected. "I don't like that." "I know," she said calmly. "But you've spent your entire life defining yourself through roles: provider, decision-maker, authority." She leaned forward slightly. "Now you have to figure out who you are without those roles." I exhaled. "That sounds uncomfortable." "It is." "And how long does that take?" She gave a small, knowing look. "As long as it takes." I shook my head slightly. "I'm not used to that." "I know." Another pause. Then she added, "But you're doing something most people never do." "What's that?" "You're changing without being forced to," she said. "You're choosing it." I thought about that. About the past few weeks. About every moment where I could have fallen back into old patterns, and didn't. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I guess I am." That evening, I didn't go back to the motel. Instead, I drove to a small park a few blocks away, sat on a bench, watched people pass by. Families, couples, kids running around. Normal life. The kind I used to think I had. But now I saw it differently. Not as something to control. Not as something to manage. But as something to experience. I sat there for a long time. Just watching. Thinking. And eventually, I pulled out my phone. Opened my contacts. Scrolled for a moment. Then stopped. On a name I hadn't called in years. My younger brother. I hesitated. Because that relationship wasn't much better than the one I had with Ethan. Different reasons. Same pattern. Distance. Pride. Silence. I stared at the screen. Then, before I could overthink it, I hit call. It rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then, "Hello." His voice. Older. But familiar. "Hey," I said. A pause. "Daniel." "Yeah." Another pause. Longer this time. "What's going on?" he asked cautiously. I took a breath. I wanted to talk. Silence. Not hostile. Just unexpected. "About what?" "Us," I said. That landed. I could feel it. "Why now?" he asked. I almost smiled. Because I had heard that question before. And this time, I knew the answer. "Because I'm finally listening," I said. There was a long pause on the other end. Then, "Okay," he said slowly. Not warm. Not open. But not closed either. And that was enough. More than enough. That night back in the motel, I sat at the desk again. Same place where everything started to shift. But this time, I wasn't writing a letter out of desperation. I was writing because I wanted to. Not to fix something. Not to prove something. Just to express something. I started writing. Not to Ethan. Not this time. To myself. About everything. About who I had been. About who I was becoming. About the space in between. And as the words came out, I realized something that had been building quietly beneath everything else. This wasn't just a story about a father and a son. It wasn't just about loss, or regret, or even redemption. It was about something deeper, something harder, something most people never face. The truth about themselves. Not the version they believe. Not the version they present. The real one. The uncomfortable one. The one that forces you to either change or stay exactly the same. And for the first time in my life, I knew which one I was choosing. Not once. Not in a single moment. But every day. Over and over again. And that was the real beginning. Months passed, not in a blur, not in a rush, but in a way I had never experienced before, intentionally. Every conversation, every pause, every choice, it all felt deliberate. And that changed everything. Ethan and I didn't suddenly become close. We didn't fall into some perfect rhythm where everything was easy. There were still moments. Moments where he pulled back. Moments where I caught myself almost slipping. Moments where the past felt closer than the present. But now, we handled those moments differently. We didn't ignore them. We didn't explode because of them. We worked through them. Together. One afternoon, we were sitting in his living room. No coffee shop. No neutral space. His space, which had started to feel a little familiar to me again. Not mine. But not Che Uje either. Somewhere in between. He was working on his laptop. I was sitting across from him, reading something on my phone. Quiet. Comfortable. Then he closed the laptop, leaned back, and looked at me. "I've been thinking about something," he said. I put my phone down. "Okay." He hesitated. Not out of fear. Out of care. Like he was choosing his words carefully. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" he asked. I exhaled slowly. "Yeah," I said. "More than I probably should." He nodded. "Me too." Silence. But not heavy. Just reflective. "I used to imagine it a lot," he said. "Like what it would have been like if you were different back then." That stung. But I didn't react defensively. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I understand that. I used to think maybe I wasn't enough," he added. "Like if I had just been better at something, or more like what you wanted." I shook my head gently. "That was never it." "I know that now," he said. "But back then, it didn't feel that way." I leaned forward slightly. "That's on me," I said. "Not you." He nodded. "I know." Another pause. Then, "But you know what's weird," he said. "What?" "I don't think about that as much anymore." I looked at him. "Why?" He shrugged slightly. "Because now I see you trying," he said. "And it kind of changes how I see everything else." That hit deeper than anything else that day. Because it wasn't about the past anymore. It was about the present, reshaping it. "I can't change what I did," I said. "I know. But I can show up differently now." "You are," he said. And there it was again. That recognition. That quiet acknowledgement that something real had changed. A few weeks later, something happened that I didn't expect, didn't prepare for, and definitely didn't think I'd be ready for. Ethan asked me to come with him. To somewhere I hadn't been in a long time. The cemetery. Where Laura was buried. I stood there for a moment after he said it. Not speaking. Not moving. Just processing. "You don't have to," he added. I shook my head. "No," I said. "I want to." And I meant it. The day we went was quiet. Cloudy. Not dramatic. Not heavy in the way movies make it seem. Just still. We walked side by side. Not talking much. Didn't need to. When we reached her grave, I stopped. My chest tightened. Not violently. Just deeply. Her name. Carved in stone. Final. Real. Ethan stood next to me. Hands in his pockets. Looking down. "She believed in this," he said quietly. "In what?" "In you changing," he replied. I swallowed. I wish I had listened to her sooner. "Me too," he said. We stood there in silence for a while. Then, after a moment, I stepped forward, kneeling slightly. Not because I had to. Because it felt right. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just honest. "For not seeing what you were trying to show me," I continued. "For not listening. For everything." The wind moved slightly. Soft. Barely noticeable. But it felt like something shifted. Not outside. Inside. Ethan didn't interrupt, didn't rush the moment. He just stood there, letting it happen. After a while, I stood back up, exhaled slowly. She would have been proud of you, I said to him. He shook his head slightly. She would have been proud of both of us, he replied. I looked at him, surprised. But he didn't look uncertain. He meant it. And that meant more than anything else. On the drive back, something changed again. Not dramatically, but clearly. There was an ease between us, a quiet understanding, not built on words, but on everything that had led to this moment. When we got back to the house, I didn't rush to leave, and he didn't expect me to. We sat for a while, just talking, normal things, life things, but underneath it all, there was something new, not fragile anymore, still growing, but stronger, real. Hey, he said at one point. Yeah. I've been thinking about something else. I smiled slightly. Seems like you've been doing that a lot lately. He smirked. Yeah, probably your fault. I'll take that. He leaned back, more relaxed than I had ever seen him. I was thinking, maybe you don't need to stay in that motel anymore. My chest tightened slightly. Not with fear. With something else. You mean? I mean, he said, choosing his words, you could stay here for a while. Silence. Not awkward. Just full. You don't have to, he added quickly. I'm not saying. I'd like that, I said. He stopped. Looked at me. You would. Yeah, I said. But only if you're sure. He nodded. I am. I took a breath. Slow. Steady. Then, yeah, I said. I'd like that. And in that moment, it didn't feel like I was getting my house back. It didn't feel like things were going back to the way they were. It felt like something completely different. Something better. Something built on choice. On respect. On understanding. Not control. Not expectation. Not fear. And as I sat there, in a place that used to represent everything I thought I had built, I realized something that finally fully made sense. I hadn't lost everything that day. I had lost the version of my life that was never truly whole. And in its place, I was slowly, patiently, deliberately building something real. Something that didn't need control to survive. Something that didn't rely on conditions to exist. Something that could actually last. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to hold everything together. I was learning how to let things grow. And somehow, that made all the difference. Moving back in didn't feel the way I thought it would. There was no big moment. No dramatic sense of I'm home again. It was quieter than that. More careful. More respectful. I brought only a few things at first. A small bag. Some clothes. Nothing that tried to claim space too quickly. Ethan noticed. Of course he did. You can't bring more, you know, he said one evening as I set my bag down near the couch. I shook my head lightly. I will, I replied. Just not all at once. He studied me for a second. Then nodded. Yeah, he said. That makes sense. And that right there. That understanding without needing explanation. That was new. The first few days felt unfamiliar. Not tense. Not awkward. Just different. We moved around each other carefully. Not because we were afraid, but because we were aware. Of space. Of boundaries. Of everything that had happened before. I didn't touch anything that wasn't mine. Didn't rearrange anything. Didn't step into rooms without a reason. And most importantly, I didn't try to fix anything. Not the house. Not his routines. Not his life. I just fit into it where I could. One morning I woke up early. Out of habit. The house was quiet. Still. I walked into the kitchen. Made coffee. And for a moment, I froze. Because this used to be my domain. My routine. My space. And now, it wasn't. Not in the same way. I stood there, holding the mug, and made a decision. I didn't change anything. Didn't move anything around to make it feel like mine again. I left it exactly as it was. Because this wasn't about reclaiming space. This was about earning it. Ethan came in a few minutes later. Stopped when he saw me. Not surprised. Just noticing. "You're up early," he said. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. He nodded, grabbed his own mug, poured coffee. Then leaned against the counter. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then, "You didn't rearrange anything," he said. I glanced at him. No. He looked around the kitchen. Then back at me. Thanks. Simple. But it carried weight. Respect. Acknowledgement. Trust, starting to take root in a new way. Living together again didn't erase the past. If anything, it made certain things more visible. Little habits. Old patterns. Moments where the old version of me would have stepped in without thinking. Like the night he left dishes in the sink. Before, I would have said something. Immediately. Corrected it. Turned it into a lesson. This time, I noticed it. Paused. And did nothing. The next morning the dishes were gone. Handled. Without me needing to step in. And that taught me something important. Not everything needs intervention. Sometimes, things resolve themselves when you give them space. A week in, something shifted again. Not big, but meaningful. I came home one afternoon and found Ethan in the living room. Looking frustrated. Laptop open. Papers scattered. I didn't jump in. Didn't ask immediately. I just set my keys down. Gave him a moment. Then, "Rough day?" I asked. He exhaled. "Yeah." I nodded. Didn't push. Didn't ask for details. Just stayed nearby. A few minutes passed. Then, "I might lose this client," he said. I looked at him. "You want to talk about it?" He hesitated. Then nodded. "Yeah." And just like that, he let me in. Again. But this time, it felt even more natural. Less like a moment. More like a pattern. We talked it through. Not me leading. Not me fixing. Just working through it together. And at one point he stopped. Looked at me. And said something that caught me off guard. "You're really different now." I smiled slightly. "I've heard that before." "Yeah," he said. "But this time, I mean it in a different way." "How?" He leaned back. Thinking. "Before it felt like you were trying to change," he said. "Now it just feels like this is who you are." That was everything. Because that meant it wasn't temporary. It wasn't effort anymore. It was identity. And that's when you know something has truly changed. But the real test came a few days later. In the kind of moment that used to define everything. Conflict. It started small. Something insignificant. I don't even remember what it was about. Maybe that's the point. Because it wasn't about the issue. It was about how we handled it. Voices didn't raise immediately. But tension built. You could feel it. Old habits knocking at the door. Old reactions waiting to take over. Ethan said something sharp. Not cruel. But edged. And for a split second, I felt it. That familiar urge. To respond. To assert. To win. It was right there. Ready. Automatic. But this time, I saw it. Before it came out. And instead of reacting, I paused. Took a breath. And said something I had never said before in a moment like that. "You might be right." The room went still. Ethan blinked. Caught off guard. "What?" "I said you might be right," I repeated. "I don't think this is worth turning into something bigger." Silence. But not the tense kind. The shifting kind. The kind where something old breaks. And something new takes its place. He looked at me for a long second. Then, "Okay," he said. And just like that, it ended. No escalation. No damage. No lingering resentment. Just over. And that's when it really hit me. Change isn't proven in the calm moments. It's proven in the moments where you used to lose control and choose not to. That night, I sat alone for a while, thinking, not about what I did right, but about how natural it felt. That pause, that choice, that restraint. It wasn't forced. It wasn't difficult. It just was. And that's when I understood something that had been building quietly this whole time. I wasn't managing my behavior anymore. I had changed the way I thought, the way I reacted, the way I existed in the world. And because of that, everything else changed too. Later that night, Ethan walked into the room, stopped near the doorway. "Hey," he said. "Hey." He hesitated. Then, "Thanks for earlier." I nodded. "Of course." He shifted slightly, then added, "Old you would have handled that very differently." I let out a small breath. "Yeah," I admitted. "But you didn't," he said. I looked at him. "No," I said. "I didn't." He nodded, then gave a small, almost unnoticeable smile. "Good." And as he walked away, I realized something that felt bigger than anything else so far. This wasn't fragile anymore. This wasn't something that could break with one wrong move. This was something that had roots now. Something steady. Something real. Not perfect. Not finished. But strong enough to hold. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of losing it. Because I finally understood how it was built. The weeks turned into months. And somewhere along the way, we stopped counting. Not because time didn't matter anymore, but because it finally wasn't something we were racing against. There was no deadline to fix everything. No invisible clock ticking down to some final moment of proof. There was just life. And for the first time, it felt like we were both actually living it. It didn't mean everything was perfect. There were still quiet days. Still moments where Ethan pulled back into himself. Still nights where I sat awake, thinking about all the years I couldn't get back. But those thoughts didn't control me anymore. They didn't define what came next. Because now, when those moments showed up, I didn't try to escape them. I let them exist. And then I let them pass. One evening, months later, we found ourselves sitting on the back porch. No phones. No distractions. Just the sound of the wind moving through the trees. Ethan leaned back in his chair, staring out into the yard. "You ever think about that day?" he asked suddenly. I knew exactly which day he meant. The one that started everything. The one where I lost it all. "Yeah," I said honestly. "I do." He nodded slightly. "Me too." Silence. But not uncomfortable. Just real. "I used to think that was the worst day of my life," he continued. I looked at him. "And now?" He exhaled slowly. "Now I think it might have been the most important one." That stayed with me for a second. Because I had been thinking the same thing. "I think you're right," I said. He glanced over at me. A small, knowing look. "Yeah." "Yeah," I replied. "Because if that hadn't happened, I don't think either of us would be sitting here like this." He thought about that. Then nodded. "Probably not." A few days later, something unexpected happened. Not dramatic. Not life-altering. But meaningful in a way that only small moments can be. I came home and found a set of keys on the table. Not mine. New. I picked them up, turning them in my hand. Ethan walked in from the other room. "That's for you," he said casually. I looked at him. "For what?" He shrugged slightly. "For the house." I didn't say anything at first. Just stared at the keys. Because this wasn't about access. It wasn't about convenience. It was about something much bigger. Trust. Not the kind that's given quickly. The kind that's rebuilt slowly. Piece by piece. Moment by moment. Choice by choice. "You sure?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah," he said. "I am." I closed my hand around the keys. Felt the weight of them. Not heavy, but significant. "Thank you," I said quietly. He gave a small nod, like it wasn't a big deal, but we both knew it was. That night, I didn't sit alone. I didn't write. I didn't reflect in silence. Instead, we ordered food, sat in the living room, watched something neither of us was really paying attention to, and talked about nothing important and everything that mattered. Later, as I turned off the lights and headed toward my room, I paused for a moment, just stood there, taking it in, not the house, not the space, but the feeling, the difference, because this time, I wasn't walking through a life I thought I controlled. I was part of something I finally understood, something that didn't belong to me, something I didn't own, but something I was allowed to be part of, and that made it more valuable than anything I had before. The next morning, I woke up early again. Old habit. But now it felt different. I walked into the kitchen, made coffee, sat down, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to think about the past or worry about the future. I just sat there, present, calm, at peace. Ethan walked in a few minutes later, still half asleep, grabbed his mug, sat across from me. We didn't say anything at first, didn't need to. Then, after a moment, he looked up. "Morning," he said. I smiled slightly. Morning. And that was it. No tension, no distance, no unspoken weight hanging between us. Just a simple moment. Easy, normal, real. And that's when it finally settled in. Not as a realization, not as some big emotional breakthrough, but as something quiet, steady, certain. I didn't lose everything that day. I lost the version of my life that was built on control, fear, and misunderstanding. And in its place, I was given something I had never truly had before. A second chance. Not to go back, but to move forward, the right way. Because in the end, it was never about the money, or the house, or the power I thought I had. It was about something much simpler, much harder, and much more important. Learning how to show up, learning how to listen, learning how to love without conditions. And once I finally understood that, everything else fell into place. Not perfectly, but honestly. And for the first time in my life, that was enough.